It is Friday, December 23rd. Let's talk PlayStation. So surprisingly, we do have some news stories to talk about this week, so thankfully it wasn't super dead and we would have to come up with some other idea for something to talk about. We got things to talk about right now. Like, real quick, if you do have PlayStation VR, you'll be pleased to know that an update is rolling out to the YouTube app to have PlayStation VR support, so you can now use... you can watch full, VR, field of view videos on YouTube, so that's great. That was the quick little news story. Now into some more lengthy ones. So Media Molecule just recently this past week announced that their beta is not going to be hitting 2016. Kind of obvious at that point. 2016 is more or less over. And they're saying that their beta is going to be slipping into 2017. And they still have no release window for the actual game. I wanted to talk about Dreams, and I wanted to bring up this news story because here's the thing about Dreams. I mean, there's no buzz for this game. Media Molecule has been very silent about it, so it's also kind of their fault, at least, for not trying to stir up a little bit more buzz about their own title, and even more so for Sony for not trying to maybe bring this title a little bit more in the limelight. But that might mean that it's further away than we kind of think. Maybe it's later 2017 when this game will get released or something. But it's just one of those things where we don't really hear many people talk about this game. Not many people get to play this game, it seems. Even more importantly, if you ever see news regarding Dreams, it's just something you can kind of gauge. There's just not really a whole lot of buzz going on. Not a lot of people are talking about it. It seems like no one's really kind of looking forward to this title. It's really kind of worrying me. I love Media Molecule, and it's I guess it's more specific to me, and it's more specific to the people that really have some resonance with their games, and the kind of games that are always a little bit different. That's what I love about Media Molecule, and that's what I love about a number of different titles, and more specifically with Sony as a publisher, because sometimes Sony likes to support a lot of different titles that are a little bit more out there, a little bit more odd, or something that I think a lot of other publishers maybe wouldn't fund or give developers the time of day, but Sony sometimes picks up a lot of these developers, and Media Molecule is one of them. They had a really interesting out there sort of idea with like Little Big Planet back in the day, and it turned out well for them. And so I like games that are always approached in a different manner, if they're approached a little bit more artistically, and Dreams is totally that, right? Like, if you look at the footage, if you look at the guys talk about their game, they're very passionate about it, and the game looks entirely, completely, at least to me, totally bizarre and interesting, and I totally love the vibe that they're going with it, and it's a game that I'm all about. But I can totally see why this is the kind of title that is not going to take the world by storm. And I think Little Big Planet was that particular title that did take people by storm, and I guess that's because the game at least kind of had a sort of a cute factor to it, and it was very easy to play and very easy to get into. Had a great marketing push. Sony had a great push with that game. But with Dreams, I mean, it just seems like it's in a different place, and it's getting me really worried about it. And that's the thing, is like I can see why it's in the position that it's in, but I still am I'm still super excited for it, and I'm sure that whatever the final product is going to be, I'm going to really enjoy it. But I can't help but have a little bit of fear for this game, because it seems like it's going to just go by. Next news story: Wedbush security analyst Michael Pachter. We don't talk about Michael Pachter too often, but he always is quite famous for some of his out there sort of predictions. So he had one prediction recently, and it was regarding PlayStation 4 in 2017. More or less, his prediction is by the end of 2017, PlayStation 4 will get an official price cut to at least $200 in the US, which is dramatically pretty low. Now, technically speaking, right now the MSRP for PS4, PS4 Slim, mind you, it's $300. That is the technical MSRP. But if you look online right now, even well past Black Friday and all the holiday sales, the PS4 Slim, the Uncharted 4 bundle, is going for well under $250. Like most places are offering $250, but right now I just checked. Amazon's got it for like $230, I think. Walmart's got it for $230. Like tons of retailers are doing just crazy deals for it. At one point, Amazon had it up for $212. Which is incredibly low. Now, we got to keep in mind the PlayStation 4 with Sony, they've been selling the console at a profit. They've streamlined manufacturing heavily with Slim, you'd have to imagine. They've lowered a lot of the price of the components. Obviously, the power of PS4 has stayed the same since 2013. Of course, they've obviously does some different changes inside the system internally, and that's clearly so with Slim, but those are always cost-cutting measures, and the chips are easier to manufacture. Even simpler things like not doing glossy plastic anymore, or the touch capacitive buttons anymore. Things like that. The fact that the shell of the PS4 is smaller, like all those things add up over millions of units. So you'd have to imagine Sony has a lot of breathing room with each PS4 being sold. So initially, when I heard this prediction from Michael Pachter, I thought, that's another one of Michael's sort of out there ideas, but when you really start to think about it, Sony probably could eat that cost and get it down to, well, certainly $250 for sure. We know they can do that. But down to an official MSRP of $200, it's a little bold. That's taking a full $100 off the MSRP, so that's why it's still kind of sort of an outlandish idea. But I get, when you really think about it, it's not totally out of the realms of impossibility. I think Sony would, if it did get to that point, within any point of 2017, you have to imagine it'd probably be on the later side of 2017, certainly if they were to ever do this. Probably around the fall would be a great time to do it. It would at least go to $250. But if retailers are able to, cut the system down to almost $200 and absolutely $250, and keep in mind they're throwing in a game with the system too, and it seems like no matter what PS4 bundle is out, it's going to include a game. They can always afford to throw a game in it as well. Like the profit margin is certainly is leaving that room there. So it'd be quite interesting to see if Sony were to do something like that. It's not totally impossible. And a $200 PlayStation 4 would absolutely keep Sony's numbers pretty healthy, and I think they would probably want that to keep happening throughout 2017. So we'll see. And now for our headlining news story. I'm sure a lot of you are pretty interested to see what is going on here if you didn't actually catch this yourself. So this past week, the Xbox head Phil Spencer was on Twitter tweeting to some people, talking about some stuff. Said one pretty interesting conversation that certainly took a lot of people by surprise. So somebody was kind of discussing about bring Rise back to Xbox or something, and Phil Spencer was kind of explaining how console gaming needs to grow a little bit, and that doesn't necessarily happen with bringing back old IP. You gotta do new IP as well and keep a nice healthy balance there. Great stuff from Phil as always. He's always been a pretty great guy, but it gets to a point where this fan asks, is it better to focus on new IP and first party instead of doing COD type marketing deals? And Phil kind of follows up later on by saying, paying marketing funds so another console base can't play a piece of content doesn't feel like growth. Now, he said this on December 20th, and if you've been following along if you've been playing games within the last decade, that's pretty insanely hypocritical of Phil to mention, because Microsoft is vehemently well known for doing that in the console industry. Paying marketing funds to keep content off of another console. Now, this was very prominent in the previous generation with Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Now, Microsoft did this constantly. Some of the big notable ones, of course, were the COD map packs. They had the full exclusivity there. Obviously, Sony has this now, but they did this for all the 360 generation. The Grand Theft Auto DLC packs, those big episodic content packs, Lost and Damned, Battle Gate Tony, those were first on Xbox. The original Mass Effect was, I believe, kept on Xbox 360 for quite a long time. In fact, PlayStation 3 didn't get it till 2012 or something. Something absurd like that. Some more recent ones, Rise of the Tomb Raider, obviously the original Titanfall. Now, this isn't just specific to DLC. Obviously, these are also, full, complete games as well. But you get my point. And there are a number of other examples where Microsoft just does this, you know what I'm saying? And it boils down to exactly what Phil is saying. A lot of the times this conversation is a little iffy to have because we don't know every single title's specific terms and conditions. Sometimes it is exactly what Phil's talking about. Just giving marketing funds, and that's the deal. We'll pay the marketing funds. We get it marketing rights, but that game is staying, exclusive to our platform for so-and-so amount of time, or content's coming to our console first for a certain amount of time. But there are other instances like, say, Sunset Overdrive. Sunset Overdrive wasn't necessarily that situation. Now, at least from what we're being told, Insomniac went with Microsoft because Microsoft allowed them to retain the IP of Sunset Overdrive, whereas Sony, you would have to imagine Sony wanted the ownership rights to Sunset Overdrive, which Insomniac doesn't want anymore. They want to own their own IP. That's why they went with Microsoft. So that's why it's kind of always a little bit difficult to have these conversations, but more often than not, it is always an exchange of money, whether it is marketing rights or not, to, you know, secure exclusivity in some way, shape, or form. It also is a little iffy because sometimes it is a situation where legitimately the game would not happen unless the hardware manufacturer stepped in and provided, you know, funds for development. And that's kind of the difference there. Funds for marketing rights, funds for development are two completely different things. There are some games that, you know, for example, things that I can more so speak for Sony because I know more knowledge about Sony. I'm sure Microsoft has absolutely done this as well, but Sony does this a lot too, where games would not happen without Sony. They fund a lot of, you know, developers initially to get their game off the ground, and in return they do ask for that exclusivity. Like That Game Company, that was a 3-game deal, and they needed the money to start those games. There's a number of other ones I can't think of right now, but so it is a tough conversation to have, but it does happen. And so when Phil says something like that, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, you goddamn hypocrite!" And honestly, that's what I thought of too at first when I first read that. But then you start to think right away, well, the guy's just voicing his opinion. He's obviously not. The thing about Phil Spencer is you can clearly tell that he is an honest guy. He's a kind of a straightforward kind of person. Like, he's really not trying to bullshit you or anything like that. Like, Don Matrick was the kind of guy. I mean, he was the Xbox side, where he kind of was very buzzwordy, like PR-y, like he was good at what he did. He could kind of dance around things, and he could kind of get the job done in a very aggressive manner, and that's kind of what Microsoft needed at the time too. And that's kind of the talking point I guess I'd like to get into, which is that he says it's not good for growth, that those kind of business strategies. Well, I don't know. I guess I'm of a bad mind, but it's like I think that kind of stuff still sort of fuels, you know, competition, and that's really what it gets down to. I'm not going to, you know, give you some sort of, you know, bullshit, overly drawn out sort of answer to it. I mean, it boils down to competition. You know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff does make shit happen, and it. But I agree too that stuff like that is shitty, like exclusive DLC or timed exclusivity. I get it. It is so fucking annoying. I hate it just as much as everybody else does. But these are multi-billion-dollar corporations. Those kind of things, you know, getting aggressive with one another, it does help because that's, you know, they're both striving for your dollar, and that's the kind of things that they do to get your dollar. And that's just going to be the cat and dog game between those two when they do deals like that, even though at the end of the day it is very anti-consumer. But I do agree with Phil in terms of his earlier comments. You know, you do need a healthy balance of new IP and existing IP. But yeah, that's the thing. I think Phil's coming from an honest place. The interesting thing is he made that tweet on the 20th, and then he followed it up a few days later, actually just recently, saying, people are getting worked up on this. Never said Xbox has never done this. Not calling out others, just not a practice I like. That's it. So it is important to keep in mind a lot of those really aggressive strategies that Microsoft often does was back in the Xbox 360 days. Phil just recently became the head of Xbox like 3 years ago, right? Yeah. So and there were still deals within that time frame where he was the head, and these things did happen. So you'd have to imagine he did call some shots there. But I don't fault him for it because it is business, and he's just coming from an honest perspective of like, you know, I guess it's like a sort of a devil's advocate. He probably did those things because he knows he has to do those things, but I guess he wouldn't necessarily want to do them. But he said that, and I was just like, and a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" Like, and Sony's not to. That's the thing. Sony is absolutely not safe from this either. In fact, it's weird because the positions have kind of turned. You know, back in the day, Sony didn't really do that at all. Sony was kind of in a position where they did always kind of, at least from what I always saw, they funded a lot of developers, funded a lot of unique titles, kind of going back to what we were talking about with Dreams, and that's what I liked about Sony. And they've done that for a long time, since the original PlayStation. You know, they've always kind of done that with developers, and I've always kind of appreciated that sort of outlook and how they kind of work with people. But as of recent, Sony's been kind of getting pretty aggressive with that stuff too, you know. So they're certainly not at fault there either. I mean, it does. It happens on both sides of the spectrum. There's really no, you know, because it does. This conversation turns into a console fanboy war stuff. I hate going into that shit, but that's always what it divulges into, and that's fine. This video will probably get a ton of dislikes from people that think there's some sort of propaganda or something that I'm trying to, you know, put out there. I have no tolerance for that stuff, but both of these companies do it, and ironically, I think it is one of those things where it kind of, I don't know, it's maybe it is, maybe it isn't good for growth, but it does. I don't want to say keeps things interesting, but it keeps things happening. I'll say that. You know, if Microsoft didn't do all those things, it wouldn't make Sony do the things that they did with PS4. If Sony didn't start doing all the great things with PS4, it wouldn't make Microsoft start, you know, turning around Xbox. It's just competition. It is a thing. Those are just some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. So, this episode's 2 days from Christmas, so I just want to say right away, Merry Christmas. And any other holidays that any of you guys celebrate. I celebrate Christmas. I'm saying Merry Christmas. But any other holidays, by all means, Happy Holidays. We were talking about it in the Spyro Let's Plays. When I was growing up, I was we were totally a Christmas family. We celebrated every year. We always made a big deal about it. And it's always like a good time for me. In that Let's Play, I was kind of discussing how there's like sort of a lot of negativity around the holidays nowadays, and it's been kind of bumming me out. But like I just trying to spread some positivity, man. Things are good, you know. Enjoy life, just be a good person. And by being a good person, I'm going to hook you guys up with a little free code that I got. My friend Blaine from Twitter gave me a Wackiest code for Pokemon Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, X and Y. I wish I had something to give away now that I think about it, but I don't have any spare. We haven't done a giveaway in a while. I need to email some developers and try and get some things going, get you guys some more giveaways and stuff. I have not done one in a while, but he hit me up actually because he knows I play Pokemon a lot, and he sometimes hooks me up with awesome codes. And he had an extra code for Wackiest. So if you want a legit Wackiest in your game, I'll put it up right here. First come, first serve. I don't want to spend a whole week doing a giveaway type thing, and I usually don't like the first come, first serve thing, but I'll just do it this way for now. But yes, thank you, Blaine. So if anybody who ever wants that, grab it. It's a free Arceus if you are into Pokemon. And thank you very much, Blaine, for doing that. And we're going into a new year very, very soon. So I think next week, the next LTPS episode, we will do 2017, our predictions. So we'll go over last year's, and we'll do some new predictions for what PlayStation and what Sony are going to be doing for all of 2017. Exciting times are upon us, people. And you should definitely feel it downstairs, because I do. That concludes this week's episode. Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm R.I.P. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next Friday.